Hi, everybody. Sarah Thompson here from wildandcreative.com, and welcome to the Wild, Creative, and Confident, a video interview series where you can learn from the most inspiring industry leaders on how you can use your passion and creativity to design the life and business of your dreams. I am with a very special person today, and she is the leader of Wild Soul Wellness, Rachael Alaia. Alaia. So she's the founder of Wild Soul Wellness, an earth-based empowerment revolution for modern women. She knows that women and girls become embodied leaders of positive change when they heal themselves and return to the wild and soulful power of nature, which I love. I'm all about nature. Love it. She lives in accordance with the principles of holism, ecology, and the ways of sacred feminine. Women can reawaken their greatest potential. She's an educator, a mentor, and a healer, and Rachael brings a fresh yet timeless approach to guiding women back to their wild souls. So that seems pretty sweet, and thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to ask you what you do as an educator and all that I just talked about there.
Yeah.
What really brought you to that point? Because I know that you also live in Puerto Vallarta.
Yes.
So you have a very fun, wild life, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Also wild. I like to live what I teach, so that's, I think, the most potent medicine that I can offer as a teacher and an educator.
Do you live a very inspired and creative life day to day, like when you are educating these women?
I mean, I would like to think so. Sometimes it's not so glamorous and not so inspired, but I think that as women, we have this very intimate connection with the ebbs and flows of life. And so I have kind of learned to live with the flow rather than be in resistance to it.
That's really the key, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people are always still kind of like fighting for something or really have that resistance in the day-to-day. So I know we've talked before, and you seem like such a person that truly does live in the ease and flow. And so I just want to say it's very magical about you. Did you always know that you were going to essentially one day be like living this reality that you're living now?
I don't think so. Honestly, like I still kind of wake up every day and I'm like, what am I doing here? And I think that the plan that I had for myself was actually a lot more limited than the plan that unfolded for me once I kind of surrendered to the way that nature was guiding me, essentially. And I often find in my life when I get really locked in on a plan or how things should be or how I think that they ought to be, I end up with a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of, like I just mentioned to you, resistance. And the more I find an openness in my practice, in my business and in my relationships and in my sort of self-care and all of that, the more magic unfolds for me, really.
What do you feel you have taken, like the passion of life that you have now, why is it different than other people's passion that you know of? Because I feel that you're a very different individual. Like you're also very educated, aren't you?
I do. I have a master's in environmental education, so I spent quite a few years in school, and I'm kind of a nerd, so I'm really into learning and studying and growing and expanding my own consciousness. And I guess what I would say that differs me from someone else would be my ability to be with whatever is in a way that I see a lot of people struggle with around me. And what I mean by that is basically understanding that we can never find growth and expansion and come to a very like juicy place in our lives if we're in constant sort of mode of trying to fix things or make things different than they are, if that makes sense. So finding a place of kind of glorious surrender and acceptance, I think has allowed me to see the juicy, beautiful magic that exists in every single moment that crosses our path, whether it's something that we planned on being there or something that is completely unknown to us.
Now, you do a lot of teachings with the book, Women That Run with Wolves.
Yes.
When did that book kind of pop into your life, and how has it changed your life from before you read it?
Oh man, dramatically. Yeah. It's interesting because the book actually crossed my path many times before I actually sat down and opened it and tried to digest it. And it is, I call it a great ocean of teachings, because there's so much depth to the work, and there's so much sort of juiciness that is in the wisdom that Dr. Estes had to share. And that book really, I sat down with it, I think for the first time, and really like dove into that ocean about a year and a half ago. So not even that long ago, but it was around the same time that I was birthing Wild Soul Wellness into the world. And it actually happened right after I returned to the apartment. So where I am right now is the apartment that I was born.
Wow.
And it felt like I had to kind of come full circle and come back home to myself, come back to the place of my birth, and then create the space for this work to unfold. And so very synchronistically, like most things in my life, I happened to have been connected to the opportunity to go actually train with Dr. Estes last summer. And so, the stars aligned for it to happen. And basically it was the first of 5 years of trainings to be able to teach and mentor women from the stories found within Women Who Run with the Wolves. And from that program, or that experience, I should say, I then kind of sat with and kind of marinated an idea that has been birthed into what is now known as Mystic Wolf Women, which is the signature program that I have for Wild Soul Wellness. So
tell us about Wild Soul Wellness and Mystic Wolf Women.
Sure, yeah. So Wild Soul Wellness, like I said, it was kind of given to me, kind of channeled, if you could say, from spirit, from source, from nature, from the universe, from whatever you want to call it. It's all really the same thing with a different name, right? So I got this idea probably in, I think it was November of 2014. And I stayed up all night. I can remember I had pen to paper and I was just like furiously writing what was coming through. And basically what I was being offered was this beautiful chance to kind of weave together a lot of the threads of my own life. So the environmental education piece, the yoga teaching, which I had done for the past few years, my creative life as an art teacher and a dance teacher also wove into that, as well as just kind of some of my own personal pieces of my own story. So different experiences I had as a young woman and a girl who didn't really quite fit in with other girls. And so finding that sisterhood piece was really a powerful healing moment for me to share that with others. So I have to admit that Wild Soul Wellness is in constant evolution, as I'm sure that you understand with your own business and working with people. It's kind of this beautiful acknowledgement of, okay, what is it that I enjoy doing? What lights me up? And kind of paying attention to where I can be of best service to those in my realm, from that place of kind of radiance and passion.
I was just thinking about the word wild. I feel like it has, in a sense, I don't want to say blown up in the past few years, but I feel like it's been needed in the past few years. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree with you. And I would probably agree that it has blown up in the last few years. And I think that there's a specific reason why that is. And I think it's because of the sort of instinctual craving for are intuitive and own wild natures. You know, we live in a world that's very sterile, very boxy, very masculine.
Controlled, yeah.
Yeah, very controlled, right? And so the wild side of our nature, which is kind of our very basic instincts, brings us back to a place of inner knowing where we don't actually have to seek anything outside of ourselves. You know, like as an educator and as a healer, I call myself that, but I consider an educator and a healer to be someone who asks the right questions and who opens doors for people. And it's up to everyone on their own to kind of step through that door and go on this journey on their own.
What has been your biggest achievement when it comes to personal power and understanding yourself to the point where you have got ease and flow in your life? I know we talked a little bit about that before, but so what has been your biggest achievement in that sense?
It's a great question. Paradoxically, I think that it's this concept of surrender that I've mentioned a couple times in our call. And I think that really what it is understanding that there is kind of an underlying intelligence at play that is much more wise than I could ever imagine myself to be. And so the more I've been able to kind of surrender to that flow, the more ease I've found in my own life. And it's not an easy path, but I think it's so worth it. You know, being an authentic expression of who I am. I think probably another achievement of mine has been in being okay with not being liked by everyone. And that's been a challenging path.
Do you feel as an individual very different? I know that's kind of a funny question, but I was just thinking, like, you live an extraordinary life in a sense, right? You have a very interesting business. You get to help interesting women become incredibly empowered, incredibly connected to nature, to themselves, to the wildness within them. I was just wondering if you feel very different or if you feel just very, that's the way it is.
Well, I suppose because I'm like in it all the time, it's hard to like have that kind of perspective. But yeah, I mean, if you would look at my life compared to like the average person's life, but like, I don't know, I think it's all really relative. You know, I kind of forget that I have had a very interesting upbringing and that my story is pretty fascinating until another person points it out to me. So
it is very, you're a very interesting person. You have a very interesting vibe, and it's all good. It's wonderful. But I just wanted to ask if you ever really felt that sense of it's truly just divine. Everything is just divine, right? That I'm here doing this right now.
Yeah. I mean, I really truly live my life by that principle. And this concept of surrender for me is really about like being very present with whatever is here right now. And I find that when I practice presence as like my kind of guiding light,
yeah,
to me that's very much soul-based. I notice signs and synchronicities and like crazy things going on and all around me, like on my path and in my life, that really help to guide me. And I honestly think that we all have this ability, and it's simply a matter of being present with it and waking up and remembering the power that is innate within you, that you have, that you can be able to create the magical life that you so envision for yourself. And really it takes kind of being different, and it takes being able to break out of the mold and have the courage to say no when everyone around you is saying yes, or to say yes when everyone's saying no. And that is kind of what I bring as the flavor to everything that I do in my business, and trickles out to all parts of my life.
You have an online business, right? It's quite online. So you work with a lot of women all over the world.
Yeah.
How have you really been able to come, in a sense, competition, or in a sense, comparisonitis? I know that you have a interesting niche, so not too many women are exactly doing what you're doing, but still very similar in nature. So how have you been able to overcome that?
So I've always been like kind of I've always kind of had an aversion to competition, and from a very young age I opted for like being a dancer versus like going into sports, and have been very like collective minded since I was a young girl. And I think what has been the most powerful piece in sort of carving out my space in the business world is by really focusing on being 110% authentic to myself. And I think when we do that, there's no way that we can be like anyone else out there, you know? And I have to admit, in the beginning of my journey, it was like, I don't even really know what my voice is yet. So that took practice, and that took being able to kind of, like I said, step outside of what everyone else was doing and what I was kind of expected of doing. And practice really like honing what's coming through me, what is showing up like as patterns in my life in terms of like the women that I'm working with or the questions that I'm getting. And I think like for me, this year I'm focusing a lot on collaboration. And collaboration is really interesting because I think that it's a general trend in the business world to be able to collaborate with one another because, I mean, let's be honest, two heads are better than or more expansive than just one, right? And so as we start to step out in the world and be this authentic expression of who we are, it gives opportunity to work with other people in an interesting way where we kind of can balance each other or harmonize with another person in a way that feels like, okay, I love doing this and I'm really good at this. I'm not really good at doing that, but you're great at it, you know? And so finding your strengths and being okay with what you're not so great at is also a really fascinating journey in itself.
Because so many female entrepreneurs and male entrepreneurs do everything themselves, right? I know that I do a lot of stuff myself, and you know, sometimes it's not even that we really want to; it's just that we've got used to doing it, and then it's hard giving up, right?
Totally.
Or giving that up to someone else to work on. So I think that is such a huge strength in anybody, isn't it? To really, in a sense, delegate, but know where your biggest strengths lie and really push those forward and really work on those.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like very early on in my like creation of my business, I took like a free online quiz on like finding your strengths, and I couldn't even tell you where it was. It was like a friend of a friend of a friend emailed me a link, and I found it to be really an interesting result that I got from that. But what it gave me was kind of like, okay, I kind of knew that, you know, and I kind of was able to then focus on what I did best. But that being said, you know, when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, you are going to do everything yourself. Like that's kind of the name of the game. If you don't have a tremendous like resource base that you're working from, financially speaking, then you're going to be doing everything from marketing to copywriting to sending out emails to scheduling to all of that. So finding time to take care of yourself in that sort of chaos, I think is really key for someone who is kind of just starting out, is not to let your own self-care and your own ability to show up for your work suffer because you're trying to get everything done. There's no race. We're not in a race. It's a marathon. So take your time, breathe.
It's a personal marathon. There's not really anybody really running with you, right? So
totally.
When you were in school or in high school, did you ever take one of those aptitude tests that told you what you should do when you were older?
That's a really good question. I must have. I always really wanted to be like like a performer, like an actress or a singer or a dancer, because I was always kind of on stage. And it's interesting because I kind of use some of that now in what I do, because I do a lot of like being on film and on video, and also recording my voice and doing different, I think as a teacher, there is an element of like getting up on stage and kind of allowing yourself to be seen.
Yeah.
So I think that if I was to have taken an aptitude test, that probably would be what I got.
I actually found mine in a drawer, and my top 3 things that I was supposed to be very good at was an artist. Okay, I can see that, but a rabbi, and a dude ranch operator.
See, and the cool thing is you can be all 3 of those things in a lifetime too. And you could probably like blend those together to like make your own career, right? Like,
I'm not sure where rabbi came into play, but you know what? Maybe, that was a few years ago. Maybe now, instead of dude ranch operator, it would say something like retreat facilitator.
Or wild woman.
Yeah, something like that, right? I don't think they had all of the answers for us back then. I was just interesting in what if you got anything like that.
That's great.
Do you have a personal method that you've used over the years for the people watching today that has really helped you find your true calling, that could maybe help them find their true authentic calling?
Yeah, and I think, it's really, like I said, it's an evolving thing. And so what works for me this year, like, might not be what works next year and might not be what worked last year. I think by carving out time in your life for pleasure and for honoring your desires is really, really valuable. So again, what energizes you? What makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning, and really allow yourself the time and the space to do that for nothing else than just the simple, pure pleasure and joy of doing it. We live in a culture that's very focused on like goals and achievements, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when the end point is the only focus that you have and you're completely ignoring the journey to get there, it's very high likely, and something that's happened to me is you make it to that destination and you're like, I don't even really want to be here, because I haven't been honoring what my body wants or where the signs are leading me, or haven't even really been soaking up the journey at all.
I kind of have a little story about that. It just reminded me, like back in the springtime, I had set aside some time to work on a book that I wanted to write, but I just had the urge to draw, like doodle. And out of that, and there was no resistance whatsoever. These happened so fast. I created 3 coloring books. And it was so weird and random because I'm not an illustrator or drawer by any means. But those just completely came out with ease and flow. And then, they're like on Amazon and things like that and some bookstores. But it's kind of like a funny story that I have, because that's really where there was no goal in mind whatsoever. And I just felt in that time compelled to enjoy myself doing something else.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's such a good lesson, like you were saying, for people to just really enjoy themselves and really, really, seek that pleasure every single day, because chances are from that pleasure, you might end up striving towards something else, and that goal becomes completely irrelevant or unneeded, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think quite often, I see people following their passions in a way that allows them to honor their hearts and their pleasures and their desires, and you kind of stumble into what your calling is, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like it usually has nothing to do with the plan that you have for your life. And I certainly didn't really plan on having this life, so I really would give that advice like over and over again, is to really like pay attention to what you're drawn to, like magnetically, instinctually. And follow.
Sorry, that's probably what you'd say to women that are, in that place in their life where they're like, I should have done this by now. Like, I've been working on this for 5 years. Um, you know, Obviously the root of X is not working out for me.
Mm-hmm.
You would just probably share with them to just really be aware of what their feelings are.
Right. Yeah. And really like honor the fact that, you know, that discomfort is a very natural part of the path. And hitting dead ends also happens to everybody, so being able to share our stories in this way where we can see that, hey, I'm not the only one who's, messed up on this, or hey, I'm not the only one who like invested 5 years in something that I ended up scrapping completely,
Right.
It's a common theme and common occurrence on this path. And so being able to kind of honor your own journey and understand that it's going to be different and yet similar from everyone else. It's interesting. My life is full of paradoxes, and so are my teachings. So it's an interesting like reminder to see that when you share your story, you realize that you have this unique journey, but that there are threads of similarities that weave among everyone's lives.
So many people think that, say they've gone to school for 4 or 5 years or even 3 or 2, and then they're thinking, oh, that's not even the path I'm going down now. I've completely wasted that time. Or even being in a relationship, say with somebody for X amount of years, and then it didn't work out. And then they're thinking to themselves, I've completely wasted those years of my life. It's never a waste.
No.
It's all part of the journey, right? So, I mean,
totally.
Sometimes...
I went to my graduate school and I got a master's. The next year I was a yoga teacher, and I had family members of mine being like, what the hell are you doing? And at the time I questioned that myself. It was like, well, I don't know. This is what's happening now. Like this is where I'm being led to go down. This is the path. And it's interesting because at one point I was able to kind of like take a step away and look back towards the different paths that I had kind of woven down, and see that every single skill that I picked up along the way, whether it was a job that ended up being a dead end or a degree that I didn't really quite pursue in the way that traditionally people would, I see that there are certain skills that I picked up along the way in every single thing that I devoted myself to, whether it was a relationship or a job, in the context of what you're talking about, that I'm using today. Maybe it's not in the same exact context, but it is absolutely valuable to explore your desires, explore your passions, and know that very likely the career that you want doesn't yet exist.
Maybe.
So yeah, so it's like, okay, how can I find the juiciest parts of what I've done and mold them together in a way that feels really me,
What is your take on if somebody is trying something for quite some time and, they're getting successes in it in some way, but maybe they're not getting the financial success in that way too? Would you suggest to that person that they still continue on? Or what do you suggest to women if they ask you that kind of specific question, like within your teachings?
I think it's really about coming back to this instinctual knowing, and what I often, when I do give women advice, it's usually, what is your heart saying? What is your soul saying? Because I can have an opinion about it, but it really matters what the person who's living it decides and feels. Based on my own experience, staying on the path and just showing up consistently. I mean, there's not really a time limit that you can put on that, but it's what brought me to a place of actually making profit in what I do, and there were months where I did not make any profit and I was in the red, and I showed up and I was like, why am I even here? A part of me was very, very questioning that. And yet there was this inner drive that existed that I can't even really rationalize or understand per se, but continuing to show up and to give 100% in everything that I was doing brought me down the path to financial freedom and success. And I think that that's really different for everyone, but acknowledging and following your heart is the absolute number one thing that I would give advice on in terms of financial sort of questions about that.
I think that so many women give up on their dream after a short amount of time if they're not seeing the financial success, even though they might enjoy what they're doing, right? So a really good key, like Rachel said, everybody, is truly, do you really still enjoy that, right? If it's still getting you excited in the morning to think about that and to work on that, I mean, that's truly what you should be doing in that moment. And truly, you don't have to be thinking about months ahead. It's just then, right? And then that time will really bring you into, more financial success, right? Because you'll be living it, you'll be breathing it.
Yeah, I really do think so. And that's not to say that like you can't have a plan B, or you can't like stay at your old job for a while and continue to do your passion work on the side until you feel like you're 70% sure that you can, make that dive. And I say 70% because we're never going to be 100% sure. That's something that I actually did take from Dr. Estie's work is...
It's not the 80-20, it's the 70-30.
Yeah. She's like, if you're 70% ready, you're never going to be more ready than that. So make that leap.
Tell us how people can get connected with you with Wild Soul Wellness and your other projects that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other project that I mentioned that is kind of the signature group program that I'm offering through Wild Soul Wellness is Mystic Wolf Women. And you can find out all the information about that at mysticwolfwomen.com. And essentially what that is I call it book club meets radical Bible study meets group mentorship meets badass coven of sisters. So we meet twice a month per the moon cycle, so on the new moon and on the full moon. And we move through Women Who Run with the Wolves, a chapter every month, every moon cycle. And we're up to 50 women now and growing at each moon cycle. And it's an amazing opportunity. So you can check that out at, again, mysticwolfwomen.com. And then all of the other offerings that I have, you can find at wild-soul.net. And I have a blog, I have a YouTube channel you can check out, which will be expanding on this year. And that's how you can connect with me. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all Wild Soul Wellness.
You have a free little giveaway that you'd like to give away to our listeners.
Yes, what is absolutely. That? So I have a quiz on my website. I love quizzes. I'm big into like nerdy stuff.
Finding out about yourself, yeah?
Yeah. Self-awareness, self-knowledge. So there's a fun quiz that I have on my website where you can figure out your wild soul element, so earth, air, fire, water. And then there's a free guide that goes along with that once you find out your results. So you can head to wild-soul.net/quiz.
Okay.
And take the quiz and get some fun little tips on how to find a sense of harmony based on your unique elemental composition.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Can we see your tattoo on your arm there for a minute?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Okay, I've got little leaf to remind me to be wild.
Awesome. Yeah. It's funny, like when you have tattoos, you kind of like forget that they're there until someone else points them out and you're like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool, huh?
So that was one of the first things I noticed about you, and you have beautiful photographs all over your Facebook page and things like that. Very inspiring. And I'm actually in one of your groups there, and Rachel is so thoughtful and like poetic in the way that you just like, do your teachings and just the information that you give, it's so soulful. So I mean, even just being a part of that group, it's very magical. So I invite anybody to definitely take part in her group, and that she offers, called Wild the Wolf Women.
Mystic Wolf Women, yeah.
Wolf Women. And anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And definitely check Rachael out, and hope you enjoyed this little interview here. And if you'd like to join in the conversation, please join us in the private group Wild, Creative, and Confident on Facebook. Thanks so much.